Excellent. So we were talking about innovating for billions. And my mentor, Desh Deshpande, often likes to say that in a society, we have three types of people. People who like to tolerate, like chalta hai, people who complain, and people who like to solve. And I'm assuming a lot of the people in this room like to solve. How many solvers? And how many likes to complain? Okay, you're important too. Because what Desh says, very important, is that a progress of a society depends on the ratio of the type of these people. If you have too many people who are tolerating, that's not great. So we need more and more people on the right. So that brings us to this question. We need to create a nation of innovators. Well before we have a nation of entrepreneurs, if you're going to solve the problems, as Rachel reminded us. But here is an even more important question. Can promoting entrepreneurship in the way we are doing actually become toxic for a society? Can promoting entrepreneurship actually become toxic for a society? So I'm glad we are talking about imagine, innovate, and inflect, and we don't have entrepreneurship written up here, actually. So why is that? Why are we worrying about this problem? If you take Silicon Valley as a proxy of a place that has a lot of solvers, maybe more solvers than there are problems, versus rest of the world, which is problem-rich, not enough solvers who are empowered to think about them. So we have, this phenomenon in Silicon Valley, as Rachel mentioned, where we have some meaningless efforts going on because we want to be entrepreneurs. And fortunately, there are many of them. So most of them fail, and eventually some succeed, and those will come on to go and solve cancer, or create Hyperloop, or create some of the best amazing online solutions. Well, we cannot take that risk in the rest of the world. We can't let a large fraction of solvers fail and allow only a small solvers to succeed. We just can't have that portfolio approach of innovation and impact. And then there's the other axis. Most folks are going to use an incremental approach as opposed to something that's disruptive. If you know how to start 2 hotels, they would go and start a 3rd hotel because it's just incremental innovation. It's unlikely that innovators in this problem-rich, solver-poor situations are going to be exposed to concepts like microfluidics or machine learning or computer vision and AI and so on. And that's what we're talking about impact innovation. How can we create innovation and impact even in the places that may not have enough solvers, and not necessarily geographic areas, but they could be sectoral as well, and at the same time allow penetration of disruptive technologies. So try to keep this kind of a framework as you're thinking about your own innovation, your own entrepreneurship journey. So on the left, we have kind of curiosity-driven work that goes on in universities and research labs, and there are a lot of community building efforts that go on, like hackathons and contests. And on the right, we have what we really want to achieve for impact. We do need entrepreneurship. We do need startups and nonprofits and other ways to make an impact. Now, we make this very naive assumption that somehow, the youth can make a transition from left to the right, and they can jump. And then we get into situations where we say, maybe if you run some contests and hackathons, we'll get there. Hackathons builds community, but then they disperse. And contests can also become toxic if not done well. You probably hear these stories all the time. There is a wheat grinder who has figured out how to use a bicycle wheel to grind the wheat, and the person gets some money in a contest, and everybody applauds about the innovative personality of this person, and they say, here is X $1,000 or X lakh rupees, and you're the winner. What happens to this person? This person takes that as a validation of their idea, not validation of themselves, but validation of their idea, and they spend the next year trying to perfect it and go forward. And we know what happens. it's not a sustainable solution at all, and their dreams are crushed, and we have added one more to the failed list. So contests on their own can also become a sugar drip, which, if not used in the right quantity, can actually become toxic and poisonous. Wow, I'm using some really harsh words here, right? So, but I really want to get that message across, because doing entrepreneurship today is very different than 10 or 20 years ago. We live in a very complex ecosystem. The tools are very democratized. At the same time, the problems we are facing in the world are very interlinked and require us to think at a systemic level. So what are some other issues we run into? So Vishal Goyal, who's one of the team members working with us, he did a survey of fresh graduates just from Bay Area and said, what allows you or prevents you from jumping into entrepreneurship? And how many of you here are graduates in the last 5 years? Okay, so many of you, right? So what's the first challenge you face? So our survey said that the first challenge they have is the youth, they just don't know what problem they should work on, because they don't know if it's a problem worth solving. The second is that even if you can find the right problem, it's not clear who should be your partner, co-founder, because often it's somebody in your class, your classmate, or your cousin, or maybe somebody who you know through your existing networks. And that person or that small team may or may not be the right person to work on. The third is what all of us already know, that many of them say, you know what, it's better just go and work for a large company because it's more likely financially to, just in terms of expected value, to make more money and make more impact and learn in these large companies. And unfortunately, we lose this amazing entrepreneurial, innovative talent to large organizations, and we never see them again. And the fourth is that often the tools that are required, the solutions that are required, maybe the latest tools in machine learning or latest microbiological efforts, that's required to solve the problem, that talent is not there. So these individuals need some more time to actually pick up those skills or find people who have those skills to actually go solve the problem. So now we have the situation, if people, that's what the service is, but on the other hand, if people who go ahead and do their startups have a situation where often they don't have the right team, may not have the right problem to work on, and may not have the right solution. And the way this gets solved often is you go and make your first pitch to a potential investor or potential incubator, and they say, no, we like this, but we don't like that. And so the team goes in minor adjustments. And then the second pitch, and the third pitch, and the fourth pitch. And they all think by just doing minor adjustments, they can eventually come up with something that will have the right team, the right problem, and the right business plan/solution. And those of you who think about optimization, there's a difference between kind of the local optima and the global optima. So you could keep bouncing around the local optima to see what's the right combination, but you don't actually throw away everything to actually find the global optimum solution. So we're encouraging this local exploration of what's the right team problem and solution, as opposed to allowing folks to figure out what's the global solution. And so that requires a very different kind of an ecosystem. And all of us as inventors, as funders, as stakeholders, are playing a role to make this more and more complex, because we are using the models that worked 10 or 20 years ago in situations where the world was less complex and we had, solver-rich environments. All right. So what if we flipped all this? What if we scrapped the notion of teams and problems and solutions? I said, you know what? If you're really good, we really appreciate that you have figured out how to grind wheat using a bicycle wheel. And for that, we celebrate you as an inventor, innovator. But how about we distinguish the inventor, innovator from their invention or their effort? And give them tools. If you meet this person and you had the right ecosystem, what would you do? You would pair them up with really good 3D designers You would give them CAD tools to design materials that are very, very strong for crushing the wheat. You would pair them with individuals who understand the ecosystem of wheat. You will do design to manufacturing talent. You would create prototypes, and you would assign all this talent to help this person do something better, or scrap the idea of wheat grinding altogether and jump into something else, right? And that's what we need. By giving them awards and so on, we're actually creating a near certain path for failure. And I realized this, by the way, doing this myself, after starting many companies and failing in some of them, and investing in some, and just feeling this desire to go and talk to the team, saying, hey, you know what, you just need to hire one more person, or you actually need to change your direction quite a bit, or actually need to add this new solution. But as you know, the teams have a very strong, self-image, and it's very difficult to change where they are. They won't stay in the local minimum, local exploration. And that's where we have to start realizing that an innovator may or may not be an entrepreneur, and startup may not be the first step if you want to really make an impact. Innovator should become an entrepreneur, and startup should make an impact, but there are multiple stages in between, and we need to acknowledge that. So what we need to do is we need to allow individuals to spot the right problems with the stakeholders and experts, probe those solutions, grow the adoption, and then think about launching. And we have to give enough time, enough expertise to move through each of those stages. And that's what we are talking about in REDX, which stands for Rethinking Engineering, Design, and Execution. And so for me, there are kind of three aspects to make this happen. We need a community building effort that takes you beyond hackathons and contests. We call it REDX Clubs, which is a 10-week online offline program. A REDX Lab that gives you an incubator-like situation that allows you to actually spot the problem and probe the solution. And a new type of a funding model, which we call flipped venture funding model, to actually sustain these efforts through existing ecosystems that we already understand. So for me, the journey started with a solution to create prescription using mobile phones. We call it INETRA. And this was a good journey for me because I started with the invention by realizing what the problems are, but the eventual team, the CEO, the funding came from a very different source. And I'm very glad that now it's being used in thousands of places across the world. Nevertheless, the process also realized is extremely inefficient to go from an idea to make an impact. And here's my lab at MIT, and my students, everybody has a kind of a 3D printer on their desk, amazing tools, amazing mentoring. And we had a whole bunch of ideas on what other ways we could solve eye care in many parts of the world. And we realized, if we just did each of them as a startup to go and make an impact, it takes 20 years to do that. But actually we can do all of that in parallel if we just work with others. And that's where it comes from, this peer-to-peer model, where we don't worry about creating upfront teams and problems and solutions and support this with flipped ventures. So the REDX philosophy, and I won't go into detail, has kind of spawned several hubs where great things are happening right now. And these are just glimpses, just a teaser of some of them. LVP Mitra is in Hyderabad, looking at low vision, neonatal care, and all kinds of eye conditions for visually challenged. V-School in Mumbai is looking at hearing challenged, oral imaging, and many health conditions. Kumbhathon, which was for Kumbh Mela, 30 million visitors in 30 days. We started looking at all kinds of problems in health and transport and transactions. And as you know, large crowds create a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. So we work with a lot of innovators, stakeholders, and corporate members to see how we can go. And here's Anil, 15-year-old kid, wants to be an innovator, But we said, let's work in a team, figure out if you want to do crowd management, how we can create solutions that can be deployed in a scalable manner. So he didn't deploy that at Kumbh Mela. He deployed that first in a shopping mall and tried it for a year before deploying it in Kumbh Mela. Cell phone tower usage to look at crowd densities, traffic routing analytics, and so on. And MIT is now learning from these teams in Nashik of all kinds of social and civic issues. And out of that came a relationship with TCS Foundation, where we have this beautiful multi-million-dollar center, also a flip model. Many projects going on. I'll talk about one or two in specific. Blood supply is a big one. It turns out in a country like India, 1% of the population requires blood supply every year. That's a huge number. But the supply and demand of that is very inelastic. So enough people actually donating blood, but it happens in a time-shifted manner. So people donate during Independence Day or festivals, but the demand actually is during monsoon season, during dengue season, and things like that. And so the inelasticity is causing a lot of challenge. So we have teams looking at this multi-billion-dollar opportunity of solving blood supply, monetized garbage, and so on. Looking at traffic intelligence, many efforts going on. Looking at crime analytics and judicial and legal solutions, fish stocks, looking at agricultural prediction, cattle milk standards, looking at informal economy and creating financial solutions for them, institutional delivery for health. And by looking at all these efforts, I think you realize by now that there are actually multi-billion-dollar problems that will impact billions of lives, and we simply don't see enough startups working in that place. Rajan Anandan, who's the head of Google India, said something very interesting, and I'm paraphrasing him, and kind of putting my own words in addition. And he kind of talked about India 1, India 2, and India 3. And he said India 1 is the first 100 million people, and we kind of figured out what problems they want. They want a lot of kind of replace my mom type solutions, hyperlocal delivery and things like that. And soon you will need kind of replace my dad type solutions, like taking you driving somewhere and providing you cash when you don't have it. This is what he said. But the India 2, which is the next 200 million, and India 3, which is the next 300 million, are in a very, very different socioeconomic situations in terms of connectivity, technology, financial inclusion, and so on. And these are actually amazing opportunities for innovators and entrepreneurs to solve, but it's just very complex for them to enter those fields. And actually, we have the possibilities to make that happen, but we have to realize that an innovator cannot become an entrepreneur overnight, and the same way around. An entrepreneur may or may not be an innovator, so they need to work together. And startups may not be the first step to make an impact. And just because you have a solution doesn't mean it's going to scale and create a platform. And just because you have a technology doesn't mean we all understand how to adopt that, because even to create adoption, we need new technological solutions in between. And probably the most important is that just expressing something as a grand challenge does not mean that billions of people out there will have new opportunities. So what does that mean for RedX then? Okay, we're talking about all these things. Are we doing something concrete? So if you're an innovator and you want to do something, go to redx.io, take this 10-week online, offline course. If you're a corporate entity, if you're an incubator, if you're a place that wants to bring these folks together, let's move away from this culture of simply saying thumbs up or thumbs down when teams come to you and propose to you whether they want funding or they want space and so on. Let's work together to actually spot problem and probe solutions. And if you're a fund, whether you are a venture fund or an impact fund or a foundation providing money, and Lemelson already provides, it's one of the only organizations I know who promotes invention and innovation from day one. If you're in any of those categories, let's change the funding structure so that we are actually focusing on this innovation, impact, entrepreneurship pipeline. That's the key. So what am I doing myself? So we have started a RedX fund in India, in Boston, and also in Silicon Valley. And there are many of us, some of our team members right here, Anita, Satya, Karpagam, who's on the TiE board. If you're all here, please raise your hand. Please talk to them if you get time, and Vishal Goel's family. We're able to create a fund that works in an inverse manner, which is by working with stakeholders and experts. We're focusing on AI for now. We can look at really amazing problems out there. I'll talk about a couple of them to be specific. Think about, all right, so I'm out of time, so it's not enough to talk about these problems, but go to our website and take a look. So when it comes to innovating for billions, I think we cannot use linear solution. We have to think exponentially. And we have to think as innovators and entrepreneurs, potentially as distinct groups of people who will eventually merge, but still look at their each problems, solutions, and opportunities as they are. Thank you.